Oh, okay, we're live. I informed nobody of this, and I kept it on private, so no one's gonna get to watch it in real time. And I apologize to all of you who are mad about that, but it doesn't matter because you're watching now. And I have a pretty exciting guest on the phone with me. His name is Christopher Blackwell. He is really well known in the prison justice and abolitionist spaces, not for what he did, not for where he is, but for what he's doing. He is an unbelievably prolific writer, and he'll explain some of that. It's not as easy to do when you're incarcerated as one might imagine. He's published regularly, and he's also active in prison organizing, and he can explain more about that and what that means, just making sure that those around him are treated with whatever modicum of respect can be achieved in such a place where that is not often found. So, Christopher, thank you so much for joining me. It would be awesome to see your face, and one day we will do it that way. But right now, it is great to have you on the line.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Phil. It's nice to be here. It's nice to talk to people more about the work and everything we're doing, and just kind of build more community and a way to push forward.
Absolutely. And assuming that everyone can hear you, this will be pretty interesting. If not, we're going to have to figure out another way. But at the very least, you and I will get to know each other better, as we've done over the course of the last, I don't know, couple months. So let's start off with what you think the most important thing is that people who may not have an incarcerated loved one or who have not had the misfortune of being thrust into this system. What is the one thing that they need to understand that they probably don't?
I mean, I think the most important thing is that we educate ourselves about what's going on behind the scenes of the system. Like, what do we have these, a lot of people in society have expectations about what's going on in prison, and that, the DOC has everything under control, that our governments are lining out the right bills and stuff in our states that are keeping things under wraps. But, I mean, at the end of the day, what's going on isn't keeping people safer out in society, and it's not really necessarily geared towards rehabilitative measures. So I think, when we want to get people to understand and know where they're feeding into these things when they vote for bills or when they put money into certain places and things like that, is we got to educate ourselves about what's going on behind prison walls, who's behind prison walls, and what's being done for people back there. A lot of the times people get frustrated that prisoners are getting a college education or something, but what they don't realize is the recidivism rates and the reduction in those recidivism rates when people do get a college education, and that person is coming back to society. And, how do we want people to come back to our society? So I think, taking the time to not necessarily buy into the fear mongering, but buy into really educating yourself at least a little bit. And there's a lot of people out there that are doing this work. There's writers like myself, John Lennon in New York, Juan Haynes in California. There's tons of writers from inside prison walls that are writing about authentic experiences and how to do this work and where this work is done and who to look at towards it.
Yes. And I do highly recommend that. I mean, it should go without saying, but it probably doesn't, that who would understand it better than those who are living it? If you have the opportunity to read a first-hand source, don't read my version telling that other person's story, right? Like that's the incredible part of, I guess, combination of modern technology and new realizations in our movement where we are able to access you. You are able to access us in ways that are in addition to personal, in addition to psychological, emotional support, things that have always been needed, and when possible, have been provided, we now have these other avenues where we can do more with it. You can extend your voice beyond your family. You can meet people like me and get interviewed, or more importantly, write your own article in the Appeal, or something of that nature. You mentioned people, you mentioned what it's like behind bars. You mentioned who is behind bars. I think one of the reasons that people are like, well, I don't want them getting a college education, is because we've all been brainwashed since birth to envision everyone who's behind bars to be a monster or a psycho and not like us. But, those who've looked more deeply into it have made the realization that, as Angela Davis said, the percentage, and I'm not quoting exactly, the percentage of those of us who are deemed criminal is far smaller than the percentage of people who've committed a crime. In other words, we've all done something, right? None of us are our worst mistakes, and yet some of us are where you are, some of us are where I am. So enlighten us. Tell us, do you have some kind, any, I'm sure you have a million, cool stories about creativity and innovation, stories about the people that you live with, and maybe talk to about ideas that end up in your writing.
Right. I mean, and I think, one, like, first, people have to be accountable for their actions. When harm is caused, like, we're accountable for that harm, and that's whether you get caught for it, that's whether you don't, or however that plays out. But it's also important to remember that we are all in this together. We are all citizens. We are all Americans. We are all human beings. Like, for us to create an other and ostracize people like we do in our society a lot of times is how we end up with, centuries of racism, and oppression and things like that. And that's what the carceral system has turned into, is where we have taken and we have started to ostracize people that get involved with the carceral system or thrust into it, or are in it because of our own actions, right? And I'm super responsible and need to be responsible and accountable for the harm I've caused. But there's also the things that need to be taken into account, like mitigating factors, right? We need to think about why people ended up here. What were their environments? The environments of impoverished communities, especially communities of color, have been created in a way to where it's almost inevitable the majority of the kids from those communities will end up in here. We have the crack epidemic that took parents away and left kids to be raised by grandparents or single parent homes, and left them in the streets with no one to look up to but people that were poor, and people that ended up selling drugs because they had to climb out of poverty or wanted to climb out of poverty, right, with no other real options. So, I mean, those factors lead to things like drug dealing and violence, and then violence leads to all the things and harms that are caused, right? But the people that are in prison are also victims. And just because you end up causing harm doesn't negate the things that you were forced to go through before you caused that harm. And I think that that's where we need to get a little bit more closer to. And I like to really kind of teach and tell those stories of people, not to take away the accountability for what we've done, but to show people that hurt people, right? So when we get to that place, how do we fix that? How do we get back on the front end so we can start to help kids so they are not a part of those environments in such dangerous ways and travel down a way of toxic masculinity and using violence to solve all their issues, but teach them like really healthy ways for them to solve conflict resolution. They can use their words, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't have to use a gun. We don't have to use our fists. We can actually solve problems with our words. And I think that's the best way for us to get there, and showing people that. And it's people like Angela Davis, Miriam Kaba, Bell Hooks, like, these are the legends of our times that are like really like teaching us this path, into a healthy way of moving to community and away from just, like ostracizing it and creating categories to place people in so they don't belong, and who's better and who's not better. So I think that it's in those ways that we get to a better society.
Yes, beautifully said. And you named a few of certainly my influences, and that's exactly right. Like, that's what we abolitionists focus on is alternative means of accountability. So to your point, and it's really worth reiterating that you prefaced everything you said with, you're accountable, that everyone should be accountable, that whether you're caught, there needs to be accountability, at least internally, right? Although, of course, true accountability involves all parties. And what we're trying to talk about is that hiding someone, maybe using them for slave labor, maybe not, but the victim and the perpetrator often being a victim themselves, as you pointed out as well, never engaging with one another in any way again, there's very little healing. And there's not true accountability either, because not everyone is like you. So if someone feels like what they did, was valid, and they never hear the other side, and they get locked up, a lot of times they sit there and they just feel righteous. So these alternatives in our systems, outside of our governmental systems that we are creating across the country at the community level, are exactly that, like transformative justice, ways where we can all literally transform from this process, and it even benefits the larger community. Do you see those kinds of things happening behind bars, like when you guys are experiencing issues amongst each other? I have to assume there's at least a desire to avoid like outside involvement of authority. How does it work in there?
Of course, and I mean that's something that the communities that we all come from were taught, right? No one wants
Right.
to call the police because the police have always made things worse.
Yeah.
They don't come to solve the problems in communities like mine where I grew up. When they show up, they look to villainize or criminalize somebody. So nobody wants to get that involvement. And the same can be said for inside. I mean, when you're a part of a community where authority has done nothing but oppress you and the people around you, and you've seen this since the time of your first memories, it's impossible to buy into a system like that or have a belief in that system, right? So I think that, that work then becomes on us. And, thankfully we've had really good people in the community that have come to do some of this work with some of us inside to help us change. There's an organization out here in Washington State called Collective Justice, that was created by Martina Cartman and a lot of other individuals she had worked with, and it uses a lot of restorative practices, and they came into prison and worked with us, a good handful of us for a couple of years, and really taught us about accountability, about trauma, about toxic masculinity, about all these terms and theories that we'd never even heard of before, right? And then we took that and spilled that out into our inside population, and it really changed the culture, right? And then, even me and my wife for the last few years, Dr. Chelsea Moore, we created an organization, Look to Justice, that is out here in Washington State, and we are helping people understand ways to fight the system in a healthy way, right? Not just give up or forget or just kind of just not play the roles of the systems that we're forced to live within and under, but how to understand that, right? Giving people a way to fish instead of just giving them a fish to eat, right?
Yes.
Teaching them how the legislative process works. How do we change these policies? How do we go about these in healthy ways? And how do we understand it so it's not out of our grasp? Right? And how do we build in community? How do we work collectively together? A lot of times there's so much trauma and there's so much of a teaching in society today where we just think about individual growth, and especially from my community where I came from, is a really impoverished community. So individual growth becomes the thing that people strive for. They just want out. They want to be, financially stable. They want to have something, So
Right.
We don't think always about working in community and collectively, but I'm seeing a shift in that from so many people's work and teachings, in our community. And a lot of people have been fortunate to be released after decades in prison and given a second chance in my state. and they all went out and started doing the work, and there's dozens of organizations in my state. We're working together, we're working collectively, like we're think tanking, right? We're starting to like find ways for us each to have our niche so we can start to change the way it is on the front end. And so we can really start to collectively teach each other how to do these safer practices for our survival, right? For our healthy survival, successful survival of like getting away from the destructive nature that like bring a lot of us from our community inside these friends. I mean, we've been doing this since we were little kids. I entered the system at 12.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not even natural or normal for people in some communities, I can sit in a circle with 12 of my friends and probably 10 of us have been shot. Like those are not natural things. Like we have to work those things out of our community. We have to work through those traumas with people to get them to get to a place to where they can be a healthy individual and add to their community opposed to take from it.
Yes. Yeah. And it's not, while accountability is key and people do make individual mistakes, they're not ultimately singularly responsible. A lot of the stuff you're talking about is a natural it's a natural instinct, I guess, because you're born with it in a capitalist system. We're all told that the way to be good, the way to win, the way to I don't know, to be successful, it's all based on money, on capital, on ownership of things. And yeah, so like it's a lot of undoing, a lot of unlearning. And you're absolutely right. Like the involvement of directly impacted people, of formerly incarcerated people, it makes such a tremendous difference. And it's also many of the greatest leaders I've known doing that work, the transitional work, helping people make the right connections and have the right opportunities when they get out. The ones doing it the right way have been through it themselves. So,
right. And you can't be accountable without first getting through your own trauma to understand what accountability even is, right?
Right. And they can really relate, right, in a way that, someone else certainly can't, even with the best intentions.
Right. Absolutely.
So there's, a couple things that I see talked about all the time by like the average population, people, just regular people. When they see photos of the food that is served, that is one thing that seems to really get people. For whatever reason, it's not seeing people getting beaten up, it's the food. Is the food as horrible as the photos? Is it as bad where you are as it is in the places where these photos maybe have been taken? And like the commissary, of course, is also, they jack the prices. So tell me about the economic system and health and wellness in a situation like where you are.
I mean, so in all fairness, I would say like the food is different, from place to place.
Okay.
Definitely probably down in the South in prisons, I'm sure what they're served in a main line is 10 times worse than what other prisons are served up and around this area, maybe. And even like,
we have 1 minute left.
I had a trip to county jail and the food, should we just start?
All right. You mean like stop and start?
Yeah.
All right. So for those
communication, folks.
Yeah. So for those who have not done this before or who are confused why my friend just stopped talking, there are time limits when you're making phone calls to and from prisons. Another thing where they jack the shit out of prices. So yes, do you want to hang up and call me back, or do you want to
Yep.
Yeah, you want to do that? All right, cool. So I'll talk to you in a second.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
The caller has hung up.
Okay, so for those watching, hopefully you've been able to actually hear what Christopher has been saying, and obviously now I'm walking with my computer, so this entire thing has been a little less organized than I would like. But you know, we'll maybe do a few more rounds of this with Chris, and maybe you won't have to watch me walking through my house next time.
Unknown caller.
Okay. Nothing is easy.
Individual at Washington Correction Center. This call to accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2. Free call, press 2. If you would like to permanently block your number from receiving calls from this facility, press 6.
What?
No third-party calls are allowed. No third-party calls are allowed. No third-party calls are allowed. No third-party calls are allowed.
Chris, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I don't. Do you hear it on your end when they say no third-party calls are allowed like 15 times?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh God, these bastards, man. All right.
You gotta love it, right?
Yeah. One of my friends, Bianca Tylek, who runs Worth Rises, this is what they focus on. The financial incentive what enables the prison industrial complex and the phones and it's just remarkable how difficult they try
I
to.
actually know of her.
Oh yeah.
She's
Oh
pretty
cool.
successful over there. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so I mean, it's just ridiculous. They do
right.
incredible work, and it's such important work because, as I was saying, they just want to make everything as difficult as possible for you, and for your loved ones. Back to what were oh, you're talking about food, you're talking about health and wellness. Any more? So you were saying that it is different from prison to prison. I suspect it depends heavily on the state and who which vendor they're using.
Right.
But yeah, go ahead,
And
continue.
of course, we're definitely eating in my state. There's not a piece of food on our tray that's not processed.
Okay.
Not a piece of meat, not a piece of anything except for maybe a fruit. You get an apple, you get an orange, you get a banana, but everything outside of that has been processed, And when we think about a person eating processed food every single day of their life, every single meal of their life, even the prison commissary, everything's processed,
Yeah, of course.
right? So, we know, just from what we're told, through doctors and health professionals, which I'm clearly not, but, that it's completely unhealthy to eat processed food, even, for probably a moderate amount of your diet, let alone, the whole portion of your diet. So, those things are unhealthy, right? And then, I was blessed to take a trip back to county jail for a resentencing that was supposed to have that got continued. But during my 2 weeks there, the food in county jail was 1,000 times worse than what we're served in prison. And it was mind-blowing to go back that far because I was, convinced that we don't have it great in prison. To see that was just on another level. There were actually trays where there was piles of mush on there that I didn't even know what it was.
Yep.
Legit, couldn't even give you an honest description of what is in this pile of food.
Yep.
And the food there is extortionate. They're charging, $24 for a case of top ramen. Things like that. That is a $6 item on Amazon.
Right.
Things. So, it's just seeing some of that extortionary costs and commissary, which we also see in prison, right?
Yeah.
Where we're getting charged these crazy rates for commissary items because they know the food's so bad that people are going to do everything they can to buy commissary. You live within a world of, in Washington State, it's correctional industries, right? The clothes I wear are from correctional industries. The bed I sleep on is from correctional industries. The food contract they have is from correctional industries. The store sold to me is correctional industries. I work at correctional industries, so the money they pay me just goes right back into their machine. It's just like a big, long, crazy, circle of madness where they're just continuing to pull in funding and using us for all of it, right?
Yep.
We make all the things that we're selling to ourselves. We make the food we're feeding ourselves. It's probably causing us cancer. And then we turn around and with the money that minimal money we make from them, we turn around and buy their store at extortionary rates that we're packing up and sending to ourselves to be sold to ourselves.
That is, well, I'm sorry to cut you off. It's a very powerful way of describing it. So, again, I hope all of this is coming through clearly, because it is the lived experiential version of what, I'm talking about all the time. My friend is not living in a private institution. Getting rid of private prisons isn't the answer. I mean, for a variety of reasons that I have gone into a million times, but one of them being that there is an immense amount of profit to be made no matter where you're caging someone. And just think about something that he said in passing, a little off the topic of the extortion, but just what it's like to to become accustomed to living in prison, and then to be shipped suddenly for 2 weeks to a new place with all new people that you haven't met, even worse food, all of those like things you've been used to, where the phone is, like what times you can do XYZ, all different. And then of course, as Chris hinted at, he didn't even get to do what he was there to do because judges do foul shit and prosecutors do foul shit, and he never got to go to court, so he got sent back. Not something that, when we complain about sitting on a long line at Starbucks, we can even imagine. Oh, look, Chris, you're missing this, unfortunately. I have a tiny cat on my shoulder, making looking directly at the camera. So I think
he's pissed too.
Yeah.
He wants to be involved in the conversation.
That's right. He knows. I mean, there's no one in this house is not an abolitionist, even the cats and dogs.
And I want to even say that, it's not even just while there's money being made in state prisons, unfortunately, the taxpayers are footing the bill for us to be here for large companies to make money, right?
That too.
When we talk about the prison industrial complex, companies like Securus and JPay and Global Tellink and all these companies that are just extorting families, there's quite a stretch where I was paying $1,200 a month for communication services, and mostly for emails and local phone calls. Who in the world pays for that? And while the taxpayers footing the bill to keep me in here in my state, which is around $40,000 to $50,000 a year for the average healthy prisoner, they're footing that bill so these companies can make that money. And why is that going on? Why is this stuff not going into rehabilitation and actually getting people ready for release instead of keeping people in prison for an arbitrary number of years?
Yes.
People don't need to sit in prison like this. I've been in prison for 20 years. In December, it marks my 20th year in the adult system on this current charge.
Wow.
While it's a very, very serious charge, and again, I don't want to take anything away from that, I have 20 years left in prison. Is it doing society any justice to have me sit here for 20 more years and then get out as a senior citizen with no work experience, no Social Security, a complete burden to the state? Or is it better to rehabilitate our people and take second looks at people and then get people back when they're ready to be contributing members of society and be healthy members of society, and give more than they take, right? And that's what we got to start thinking about, is those kind of things. And we have tons of models and data from them. We can look at Norway, we can look at Germany, we can look at Canada, we can look at all these countries that do incarceration different. Only America does incarceration this way.
True.
Probably us and some of the most crazy third world countries. And even some third world countries aren't as harsh on time and punishment as we are in our country.
No, and a lot of them have abolished the death penalty also. And
Exactly.
you know, and yeah, so it is more expensive to keep you in prison than to send you to college. And it is also insane if you are looking at the benefit of the whole society to imagine that spending that money for you know, to hide you so that only a couple corporations can make money. It's actually not logical. So then you have to then you have to wonder, then why is it? I mean, and the answer is because they don't care about the whole society. They care about a certain segment of society. And excuse me. That's why so much unlearning is required, because the people are doing this to themselves. We are doing this to each other and ourselves. I'm not part of that 1% either. And yet, like, I'm sure I'm doing tons of things to benefit that 1% that I don't even realize I'm doing.
Right.
And so
you're consuming things you don't even need.
Yeah. Right. Oh, absolutely.
Like you and your family, we've been taught as a society to need and want more. Things we don't need. We'll throw away something that's completely good and buy something new because that's the trend. That's what we need, right?
As a lot of noise happens up above my head as we spend the last the last few dollars to like repair a floor that sucks, but didn't have holes in it. So yes, of course, even we do the best that we can. But you made a really great point here, and it's that all of the money that is going into othering and disappearing people can go into rehabilitation, education, etc., mediation, etc. And all the money we're spending on cops and criminalization can go to things preventing these crimes from happening. From actually,
right? They can go to dealing with homelessness, right? Like putting money into the community, helping kids, building music programs, building sports programs, building just educational programs. We can help our kids thrive instead of working to survive.
Yep. And
often in impoverished communities of color, like what we see is kids are growing up trying to survive. They can't focus on trying to thrive, and that's doing a disservice to our communities, to our country, to our society as a whole, right? Because we don't know where the next Albert Einstein or whatever comes from.
Absolutely.
We don't know where the next impressive individual or thinker or builder or creator comes from. Like, many of them would come from our communities if we could just foster and feed those communities with the things that they need, opposed to using them to fill prisons.
Oh, without a doubt. And you mentioned survival before, and I thought immediately survive, thrive. And I'm glad you brought that up later on, because that is the point. Like, you shouldn't have to just survive in there, and people outside should not have to be surviving. This is 2023. That's obscene. There are trillionaires now, and there are people surviving. No, that's crazy. We should all be thriving. And truly, we, in some communities like the ones you mentioned, where it's what we're starting to see is so beautiful that if someone has a job, that means they can't be home for the kids aren't latchkey kids, because there's a million opportunities for them. There's community centers, there's like other parents, just community members who are like, yeah, come stay with me, like, for a couple hours, whatever it is. These kinds of things make tremendous differences, and are just like not ways of that we've ever thought, because we're thought to think about ourselves.
Right. And even like, sometimes when we think about some of these communities and the cultures and gang culture, and like, a lot of the kids, and especially I remember growing up, like thinking that my world 20-block radius.
Yeah.
A lot of the times these kids don't even realize that what's out there in the world. You know, I have a friend out there, Devin Adams, you know, that's doing a lot of work, and with the program, him and another friend, Matthew Murphy, they work with collective justice, and they work with kids. They do things like take them out to other communities, to other cities, from Washington to LA to Phoenix to other places, and show them that there's a world out there, right? It's not just this little 20 blocks, but you have this whole world that you can experience, and by doing that, you're opening their minds up to see that it's more than just that, right?
Totally.
There's not just mentors that are in your blocks, 20 blocks, that are gang members and drug dealers, but there's people all across the world you can look to and learn from. You know, and I think sometimes just exposing people to that is really like changing the way they think and see the world, right? And what their opportunities might be. You know, and sometimes it just takes a little bit of investment, a little bit of structure, you know, for someone to show that. And that's what's really important.
Yep, absolutely. And it's incredible, you know, the privilege of so many, myself included, growing up. It never occurred to me as a kid that there was another kid who, if they, you know, went to, well, I'll give an example. As an adult, I took a bunch of New York City kids and Poughkeepsie City kids to Bear Mountain, this like woodsy place with a lake and a pool, and like just seeing their eyes, like that, you know, the ones who had never seen this kind of thing before, like it changed, you know, it like, and those of us who are like, oh yeah, it's nothing, like it doesn't even occur to us that there are people where it can have that extreme impact. And, you know, and again, like, that's why it's so important for us to have these conversations. And that's why it's so important for you to be doing the work that you continue to do. It is so meaningful and so impactful. And it, to me, it means a lot. Like, you know, everyone is built different. And so not everyone can be, you know, a Christopher Blackwell. However, like, you know, if I were in your position, I don't know what I'd like, you know, like I don't know, because I'm not. I might have gone in and just started picking as many fights as possible and gotten killed. Like, who the hell knows? Like,
but think about this, Phil. If we take and invest in people, a lot of the times in prison, it's resources, right? You know, so I've been blessed to have really good resources and just the right educational opportunities, and been in places at the right time where nonprofits were coming in and doing work, and have been a huge benefit of that. So, you know, recently what I've done, you know, I've been working with a writing group called Empowerment Ave for quite some time, you know, and they really invested in me. So then when I was able to build and get a solid platform, I asked them, hey, let's create a mentor program and do a writer's development program. Let's teach other people how to do this, because I know tons of guys around me that can write just as good as me. They just don't have any of the resources or opportunities or anything, right? They don't know how to overcome the hurdles. They don't know all the navigating the journalistic like world and stuff like that. So we said, all right, let's give it a go. We started this about 6 months ago. Currently, we have 4 writers. You know, we have dozens of publications. These guys are getting paid for their writing, as they should, and able to help their families, help themselves, and things like that. And now these guys are building a platform. You know, we're creating a newsroom in prison.
Beautiful.
You know, we're creating something that now will not just share just my view and opinion of how I see the world, but now we're able to share the view of others and how they see the world, because everybody's different. Everybody has a different passion, right?
Yeah.
You know, one of my guys focuses on you know, on drugs and how they played a role in his life and how he ended up contracting HIV. You know, another one of my guys is a pastor, you know, and he talks about family a lot and the connection of mentorship and things like that. You know, we have guys that, you know, are committed to like the carceral system and changing it and fighting and advocating. You know, that's one of my guys, you know, and it's just like seeing these things happen and stuff like that. All it is just a little bit of watering a seed, right? These seeds are in the ground.
Yep.
All they did is see, like, oh, let's throw some water on here and watch this thing grow, and they're all beautiful things.
Just like just beyond, like gives me the chills, makes me cry. What should those on the outside do to help? We you know, I'm gonna have you back on, and we're gonna do it in a way where it's not live, but private, and everyone's staring at my bedroom wall. We're going to do it better. We're going to do it again. We're going to keep collaborating in a lot of ways. But before I let you go today, tell me, give me something you want everyone outside to do tomorrow.
Support our voices, right? Go on our Twitters, go on my Twitter and, Chris W. Blackwell, and see what's going on. I like to keep people updated on what's going on. We run small fundraisers to
You have 1 minute left.
keep these small programs like the Writers Development Program going. Give a little bit of money to help these things continue to flourish and things like that. But support our voices by uplifting our platform so we can reach more people to educate them about what's going on. Go to look2justice.org and see the work we're doing to help civically educate people in Washington State. We want to take that to other states. Support this work, even if it's a little bit. Find a way to support and uplift this work so we can continue to do it.
Awesome. Perfect. And I really urge everyone to do that. Every little bit helps. And like Chris pointed out, it starts with one person and it expands. He went from being a writer himself. He's now an editor and a publisher, essentially. So that's pretty incredible. Chris, thank you so much for your time, man. I love you. I hope you stay well, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Securus.
You too, man.
Bye.